Welcome back to another episode of Small Ball with Kenny Beecham. We're about a week into the NBA season, and guess what I want? I want some of my off-season takes back. I know it's kind of crazy. Just a week into the season, some teams have only played one game as I record today's episode. But some takes I want to have back. You got to think about where I'm coming from. I didn't take any breaks this entire offseason. We talk about the other shows that I co-host, Numbers on the Board, right? So you're talking about, even in the dead of the offseason, 5 hours a week of NBA talk. So I got a lot of takes, some of those takes I want back. The timing may be a bit weird. Going into last season, one of my biggest takes, one of my most wrong takes of my professional career is that I believe that the Phoenix Suns were going to be a regular season juggernaut. They started off like 8-1. So if you think about it, I thought I was right about that at this point in time last season. So it might be too early to bring some takes back, but I still want to do it. Because there's one team that I was pretty down on going into the season that has surprised me heavily. I'm probably the only person that was surprised, let's be honest. And one team that I was semi-high on that has been the exact opposite. They've been pretty bad. So I'm taking these takes back. The team that I'm going to start off with is the Golden State Warriors. Now, before the season started, we did an episode of Numbers on the Board where we were buying and selling stocks in different NBA players and different NBA teams. Teams in the Western Conference that I bought stock on ended up being the San Antonio Spurs. I mean, pretty much everybody bought stock. They have Wembanyama on their team. The Portland Trail Blazers, who played 500 basketball for the second half of the season last year. I thought they can build on some of that. And the Denver Nuggets, who everybody also bought stock on because they had an amazing offseason. They got the best player in the world. Then in the episode, as we ran through the Western Conference, the Golden State Warriors came up. And not only did I not buy stock in the Golden State Warriors, I sold it. Me, Kenny Beecham, sold stock in a Steph Curry-led team. What was I thinking? When I sold stock, I cited that I couldn't really put my finger on why I wasn't really comfortable and confident with this team for this upcoming season. Maybe it was the advanced age of their 4 players that I thought in that moment in time would mean the most between Curry, Green, Butler, and Al Horford. Maybe it was the late offseason where, we got to like a couple weeks before training camp and they still hadn't done a single thing. Maybe it was the uncertainty of Jonathan Kuminga. Well, I sold that stock. Is there like a buffer period? Can I get that stock back at the exact value in which I sold it? Maybe I'm late to the party. Through the first 3 games of the season, I have been extremely impressed. And that's even with their loss against the Portland Trail Blazers, which I'm just going to call a schedule loss. No disrespect to the Blazers. They played one hell of a game, played exactly like the team I want to see them play like for the majority of the season. But 3 games, 4 nights, second night of a back-to-back, coming off a game where you went into overtime for this aging team. Again, not taking anything away from the Portland Trail Blazers, but that is the definition of a scheduled loss. You win a game in OT, and then you don't even go home. You had your bags packed for a road trip when you fly up to Portland. Anyway, with that being said, I've really loved all the things I've seen so far. And I want to start off with, maybe the biggest question mark for this team, which was Jonathan Kuminga. Jonathan Kuminga wanted so much money. He wanted to go to a new team. It felt like the marriage between him and the Golden State Warriors was over. And one of the big questions I had going into this for Jonathan Kuminga is, what would it look like for him this year? Was it going to be a season where they're trying to showcase to the world that this guy is decent and, up his trade value? Or will it be a good old-fashioned Steve Kerr, like, he's not really my type of guy. We're going to give him spot minutes, but ultimately we're not going to trust him. Through the first 3 games of the season, he's been all letting the bag of chips. He's averaging 15.7 points per game, 7.3 rebounds, and 4 assists per game. The shooting splits are unrealistic. It's 55% from the field, 50% from 3. Again, super unrealistic. But the thing that's the most intriguing to me is that those assist numbers, if they stand, would be double his career average. I think Steph Curry said it best in his at the end of the game a couple nights ago. He said Jonathan Kuminga is playing decisive basketball, which is just 2 words that you've never really heard alongside Jonathan Kuminga's name. Decisive basketball, which is basically what Steve Kerr has been asking him to do for the entirety of his career. But I can understand. You got to think about who JK was before he was drafted. He's one of the highly touted people coming into his draft class. He goes and plays for a team before he gets to the Warriors where everybody that was in that system end up, it's a bit weird. So to go to a place that, as a lottery pick, a high lottery pick, if that, a top 10 pick, a lot of times the teams that you go to don't necessarily have a system. A lot of teams that you go to don't have championship pedigree. He went to a team that basically, from the start of his career, had real expectations. There was no room for error. It was no real room for growth. So he never really bought in. It felt like, at least until this season. He's been involved in knowing sets, which is something that Steph Curry said. One of the biggest thing for Jonathan Kuminga is just to know the sets and run them correctly. But he's been such a great screener. He's been cutting with good time and good tempo. And those are things we've all just kind of wanted from Jonathan Kuminga. And I saw that, before the first game of the season, when they announced that he was a starter, I was intrigued, but I didn't think it was going to look this good. You got to think about, again, the advanced age of the three other starters that was in his lineup with him between Curry, Draymond, and Jimmy Butler. Having a guy with his level of athleticism and, let's say, defensive potential is really intriguing. And he's lived up to that. In the Denver game, they had a lineup out there of Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, Jonathan Kuminga, Draymond Green, and Al Horford. That lineup, I don't know the stats. Again, all the stats right now are kind of weird, right? I even read the traditional stats from Jonathan Kuminga. Take that with a grain of salt. If I reference any advanced stats, it's more to prove a point in dramatic change rather than being like, hey, this is what this advanced stats gonna look like. Either way, it felt like that big lineup at the end of that fourth quarter when they went on that run, it felt like they gave up 0 points. They did give up some points, but it felt like they gave up 0 points. It felt like they gave up 0 post touches to a team that had Nikola Jokic on it. Pretty interesting. There's just so much defensive IQ with that lineup between Jimmy and Draymond and Al Horford. It's like, how do you plan on scoring? And Steph Curry, too, he's got the defensive IQ, even if the stature and the size doesn't allow him to be a really plus defensive player. It's pretty interesting things. Last year, Jimmy Butler got traded to the Golden State Warriors. He played a total of 30 games. And in those 30 games, him and Jonathan Kuminga and Draymond Green only played a total of 38 minutes. Steve Kerr talking about how the lack of spacing is really troubling for that lineup to exist. And it makes sense. In those 38 minutes, small sample size, they had a negative net rating of a minus 24. A minus 24. We are 3 games into the season for them this year. That same 3-man lineup of Kuminga, Draymond Green, and Jimmy Butler has played 47 minutes, which is, again, more in just 3 games time, and is a plus 27.2. Now, again, we're not expecting those numbers to stay the same, but it's more to prove the point that things have shifted. Jimmy Butler has looked like the same player. Draymond Green has looked like the same player. The thing that has changed has been Jonathan Kuminga. And that's fun. Right? I still don't know if he's going to be on the team February 15th, right? I have no idea, but for what it's worth right now, having this version of Jonathan Kuminga, and we're assuming that he won't revert back to his old ways, is nothing but a positive for this team that has had some of their other young players kind of, like Brandon Podziemski has not looked good so far. Quentin Post got the spot start because they were going against a bigger team in the Portland Trail Blazers, but, there's a lot to be desired there. So the fact that this young player is able to come in and, in that first game of the season, even though Luka gave him the works, he had the defensive assignment on Luka Doncic, and he did as good as you could probably expect somebody to do. Luka Doncic is just a different kind of NBA player. So I'm just really impressed with Jonathan Kuminga so far. I really like that there was a possession in the game against the Portland Trail Blazers. Again, it's a game that they end up losing. I think he still looked good in this one, where Kuminga had a really bad looking turnover, and I don't know. I'm somebody that really looks into body language at least a little bit. And I remember when Jonathan Kuminga did anything wrong, you could look at the bench and Steve Kerr and them guys and be like, oh my goodness, he committed a turnover. Steve Kerr just gave him a little clap. Let's go. And I was like, that's pretty fun. Seemed like he's earning the trust. That's just one part of it. The other part, Steph Curry still exists. And at 37 years old, he's still one of the best players in the world. The heater that he went on in that Denver game, I think it was, I don't remember if it was Trey Kirby, J.E. Skeets, or Taz Mellis that mentioned it, that the shot that he hit against the Denver Nuggets is probably the best shot for somebody, like the entire career of this random player, is probably the best shot they would ever hit. But for Steph Curry, it's just a game. It's just a moment. And he does this time and time again. Jimmy Butler started off the season, the first game, he looked ridiculously aggressive. 16, I think, was the exact number, free throws. Game 2, he looked okay, and then game 3, he looked very pedestrian. Time will tell. Jimmy Butler feels like one of those dudes that will always kind of feel out the game, and the 3 games of Fortnite things is different. So I want my stock back in the Golden State Warriors. I still don't know if I'm saying that they're a team that I think can compete with OKC in a 7-game series, but I feel more confident in them now than I did, a month and a half ago when we were doing the selling and buying stocks. When we come back from this break, I want to talk about the team that I was high on, I'm ready to sell on. Stay tuned.